which it is.
How did
Absolutely.
people not understand that and vote against it?
Yeah.
What happened?
So they were, lie would be a strong word, but I'd say that it comes closest to the word lie, and that I saw television commercials that never mentioned abortion once in from the proponents of in support of Amendment 3. Well, I don't know how you can have a television commercial about a bill, or I'm sorry, a proposal that was strictly about abortion without using the word abortion anywhere in it. And so they used a lot of things like women's health and things like that. And quite honestly, we had passed House Bill 126 back in my first year in the legislature. And, that was actually the strongest thing to protect women's health. This thing here, this Amendment 3 that passed, actually encourages back alley abortions. And then for those who are participating in these back alley or, shopping mall clinics, quote unquote, where anybody considered a healthcare professional can perform an abortion.
Yeah.
If the mother died in that process, they could not be prosecuted for anything, not even negligent homicide.
And they don't have to be doctors.
And their license, let's say an EMT, let's use the extreme, but an EMT is considered a healthcare professional. A healthcare professional is not qualified to do abortions. However, if an EMT did an abortion, the state of Missouri couldn't even remove their license for doing the abortion. Let's say a botched abortion. Let's say they killed the mother.
Yeah.
Well, we couldn't even remove their license for doing that, for them practicing outside of the scope of their license. You couldn't even do it because the amendment clearly says they cannot be prosecuted for participating in, assisting, or otherwise performing an abortion. Sure. And so literally that means that anyone can perform an abortion, and you don't have to be, it says right in there, assisting with an abortion. You're not required to be qualified healthcare professional of any kind. But a dental hygienist, I mean, people say, oh, that's ridiculous, that's extreme.
That's Stone Age kind of stuff.
But we have seen other things, and you can imagine a situation where somebody decided they were going to get in that business, right? And decided that they were going to do that, and then ended up killing somebody. Some lady, unfortunately poorly informed, and then not being able to, state of Missouri could not prosecute them for anything, not even the removal of their license, because what the Constitution says. And so,
do you have questions?
No, right now.
Okay. Well, so that's what people are saying, that we are repealing Amendment 3 and that we're violating the will of the voters. Well, I'm not exactly sure what the will of the voters is, but this doesn't repeal.
Well, according to Bill, he had 71% vote for him, and yet a majority voted against him on the bill. Like 85% voted for the bill, and 71% voted for him, and that he was somehow. He was confused because they overwhelmingly
no, that what he was saying was now in his district, which is all in Pulaski County, which is my home county also. So I had a little bit less than a third that voted for. Now, out of that, there was about 1,800 voters in my district, which is bright red conservative.
Right.
That voted in favor of Amendment 3, but also voted for me. I think that's what he was saying.
Yeah.
Was that even though in his district it passed by 71% of the vote.
But you both campaigned against Amendment 3.
Oh, absolutely, 100%.
Yeah, so that's clear. The point is that how did people not misunderstand what you were telling them about how horrible this is?
Well, it's because I don't think that did not enter into their decision-making process. They were not a single issue voter. So in other words, they voted for Bill, or in my case, they voted for me,
right? But
they also voted for Amendment 3 because they were not single issue voters, right? They weren't voting for me or Bill because we were pro-life. Well, they were voting for us because of our stance on on issues related to freedom and the limitation of the federal government and those kind of things.
Well, and I think it's clear that if we didn't have votes from major cities like Kansas City and St. Louis, the more metropolitan type areas, I don't think it would have passed without that. I mean, it was the big cities that really pushed that across the finish line.
Which brings up initiative petition reform. Mm-hmm. So we have passed that out of the House in the Missouri House of Representatives every year since I've been there, and including the 3 years prior that I know of. So for 10 years in a row, we passed one form or another of initiative petition reform out of the Missouri House of Representatives, and yet somehow the Senate can't manage to do that. It's a critical problem in that we see that a lot. I mean, me personally, I have a bill that relates to catalytic converters. I know I bring this up a lot, but it's a perfect example of what I'm talking about. It's gotten as many as 153 votes in the floor of the House of Representatives. Every single time I brought it up, it's gotten over. The least number of votes was 123 votes. And you got to keep in mind that on that day, there were 11 people who were not there. And there was a handful of votes against it. And when I say a handful, I think the maximum number of votes against that bill is 6.
Cadillac converters.
What the hell is that? What it does is it makes it harder for you to sell a stolen catalytic converter.
Oh, okay.
Okay. And it puts accountability on those who are buying them. Because as the gentleman said in Iowa with a similar bill, he said, if they ain't buying them, they ain't going to be stealing them. Now, he didn't say ain't because I don't think they say ain't in Iowa.
No, quit making fun of people.
I was paraphrasing.
That's where I draw the line.
But
making fun of people.
The point of that is I can't even get a Senate hearing for that bill. Okay, well, you got to ask yourself the question why, and I wish voters would. Why some of those things, and there are several bills like that we can't move through the Senate. We can't even get hearings on them in the Missouri Senate that are good things that affect people every day, real live people, not special interest group, not lobbyists, not those who represent those, but these are things that affect Missourians' lives every day. The problem that the people have is that, like I tell folks all the time, I said, well, unfortunately, there's no association of people who have had a catalytic converter stolen. And so therefore they don't have a lobbyist. Well, that's unfortunate. Because truthfully, every elected representative up there, whether you're in the Senate or in the House, you are the lobbyist for the constituents in your area.
Sure.
But more importantly, I'm a state representative, which means that not only do I have to consider the effects on my district, but I have to consider the effects of whatever we do on the people generally throughout the state of Missouri, whether they be Republican or Democrat.
Somewhat outside the state, too.
Well, I'm going to let Illinois worry about Illinois.
They got a lot to worry about, don't they?
Yeah, absolutely.
Every time I get online, Don, it says there are no illegal aliens in Missouri. Are you sure you're not hoarding them on your chicken factory LLC?
So there's probably that's probably straining at the legal hairs, so to speak, because the folks came into the country illegally, but we gave them temporary status because they claimed that they were being persecuted in the country they came from.
Yeah.
Well, over 80% of those, I think the last number I saw was 85% of those who claim refugee status really aren't refugees at all. They just claim the status because that way they got to stay in the country.
Right.
Then the remainder of those folks, they simply came here for a job and temporarily. And we talk all the time about, well, the lettuce will never get picked in California without these folks. Right. But whenever when you analyze that, those folks already go back and forth.
Yes.
It's because the one area where we had a weakness in our immigration thing, because we never really needed it, I guess, was a temporary worker status permit. But that's because it was the same folks every year or their families that regularly crossed the borders. They would come in on a tourist visa or whatever.
Are you saying there were enough Americans to do that job? And
No.
were they willing?
Well, so now you're going to get me off on a different tangent. So I don't want to get too far into the weeds.
Well,
but
you're intangible, so go ahead.
But we do. Honestly, we
I don't
have
know what
enough.
that means, but it sounded good.
Well, we have enough people to do these jobs. We truly do.
Okay.
It's whether or not they will. So let me explain that a little bit. Right now, if you're 26 years old, you can be declared homeless if you don't pay rent or don't pay a mortgage, even though you are sleeping in the same bed that you have for the last 26 years. That makes you eligible for Medicaid expansion. That makes you eligible for